Hello, everyone. Welcome today's MCAN professional development session. I'm just letting folks in to get settled, but we'll give a chance for everyone to get logged in. If you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, or you probably uh, yeah, just pop it into the chat. We have this set up in webinar styles, so you will not be able to unmute yourself. But if you do want to ask a question or something, I will be happy to either respond in the chat or unmute you if you want to ask directly. I'll just give it another minute or two as folks get Zoom issues sorted out. Okay, so it is 10:02, so want to make sure we have as much time as possible to get through all of the amazing content we have for you today. But thank you for joining us for another session in our collaboration with Sallie Mae to bring you information about college and finances. So today, this webinar is focused on how America pays for and completes college. Just as a little bit of housekeeping information, for anyone that's here for sketch credit, you can get up to one sketch from this session. If you did not request a sketch credit when you registered, but you are attending live in this session right now, you can email sketch at micollegeaccess.org with your name, the name of this webinar, which again is How America Pays for and Completes College, and then your PIC number. As a worst case, if you just email anyone at MCAN, we'll make sure you get to the right place, but that sketch email is the most right place. Now, if you are watching this and joining us from a recording, sketch credits are still available. So please share with any friends as well that might be looking for some credits if you find the information valuable here. But in order to receive that sketch credit, you must complete a quiz that's going to be linked on our website. The recording will be also posted on our website. And that will be a 10-question quiz that must be completed, and those sketch credits will be available through June 11th, 2026. So if you are after that date, the sketch credits will not be available, but we will still have many other professional developments to share with you. And if you are watching live, you do not need to take the quiz. That is just for the folks joining through the recording. So You all came here not to listen to me talk, but we are so excited to be joined by Jenny Chandler, who is the Director of Relationship Management at Sallie Mae. So, without further ado, pass it over to Jenny.
You
And
very
stop
much.
share.
I appreciate the wonderful welcome. I will share my screen here real quickly. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen. What we're going to talk about today is how America pays for and completes college. Every year, Sallie Mae does several research studies, and this is the 18th year that American families have been surveyed about undergraduates' attitudes towards, paying for college, how they save for college. And we have several different surveys. But again, this is how America pays for college and how they complete college. The 2025 edition, it offers a lot of insight on scholarships, financial aid offers, and really how to plan to pay for college and what families did and did not do. Research field between April 8th and May 8th of 2025, so it's still less than a year old. 1,000 undergraduate students ages 18 to 24 and 1,000 parents of undergraduate students were surveyed. Research was conducted by Ipsos and online. It was in English. And the survey sample comprised of a cross section between key demographic variables. I was going to say the population survey was from the National Center for Educational Studies. How did families pay for college in 2024, 25? Families spent on average $30,000, 837 in academic year 24-25. This figure represents a significant 9% increase from the year prior and also comes close to the reported spending in academic year 2019-20. The last pre-pandemic year, to share figures that are a little bit more familiar, families and students at a 2-year public school spend on average $15,165 on college. Families at a 4-year public school reported spending $29,128 on average, and the families with a 4-year private school spent the most at $44,791. The 9% increase in total spending that I just mentioned is largely driven by our 4-year public school families who reported a level of spending that is 17% higher than what families with students at these schools reported last year. When digging into this data, we are seeing more early spending trends of increasing spending for out-of-state families. It's really difficult to validate this finding since the data available publicly typically lags a year or two. With that said, we'll be keeping an eye on this in the future studies. Families primarily relied on income and savings to cover college costs. Parents and students covered about 48% of the total college spending out of pocket. Scholarships and grants funded that don't need to be repaid back were the next largest source, covering 27%, with scholarships at 16% and grants at 11%. Borrowed funds covered 23% of spending, split nearly evenly between student and parent borrowing at 12 and 11% respectively. The remaining 2% of college costs were covered by families and friends. The funding source share, that is, what portion of the total cost of spending was covered by each source, is basically unchanged compared to the last year, despite the increase in the total amount. Most families relied on multiple funding sources to help cover costs. And that's very unsurprisingly that we found that the two most frequently used sources were grants and scholarships and parent income and savings, and that's true across all school types and income levels. Students are also contributing from income and savings in about 57% of families. The usage proportion is about 6 in 10 among families earning $100,000 or less, but decreases in 4 in 10 families earning 150,000 or more. Well, there's a lot and lots and lots of conversation about borrowing. As you can see, only 31% of families said the student borrowed to help pay for school last year, and 21% said the parent borrowed. We'll talk about that more about borrowing later in the presentation. Finally, about 1 in 10 families use funds from friends or relatives to close the gap. In all, more than 7 in 10 families reported that the price they are paying for the student's education is appropriate or even a bargain compared to the quality of education the student receives. In fact, families were 4 times more likely to say that they were paying is an excellent value than to say their education is significantly overpriced. Despite the recent 9% increase in reported costs, it's notable that this is about 7 in 10 figure has been consistent for a number of years. That said, the perception of value does depend on how much families are paying on average. Perception of value varies by the school type. And now I want to move over and talk about scholarships because scholarships continue to be a very important piece of the pie when paying for college. Last year, 60% of families relied on scholarships to help pay for college, receiving on average of $8,004. And as you would expect, the percentage of families who relied on scholarships and the average amounts vary greatly by school type. Half of 2 year public school students used scholarships last year compared to 2/3 of 4 year private schools. Likewise, those 2 year public school students reported average scholarships amounts of about $3,100 versus almost $14,000 for 4 year private schools. So, what percentage of college costs are covered by scholarships? It's a big question to ask. Scholarships covered 10% of cost of families with students at 2 year public schools, 13% of cost for students at 4 year public schools, and even more at 21% of cost of students at a 4 year private school. Scholarships can definitely make college happen. As you can see, scholarships are a critical part of making college happen, and 75% of scholarship recipients agree. And more than that, 86% of college families believe scholarships are a good source of pride. And they should be because they're definitely a recognition for something that your student has done and achieved. So, how do families find out about scholarships? We learned that colleges play a huge role in creating awareness of scholarship opportunities. And that's not a surprise, since most scholarships are indeed given out by schools. That said, high schools were the source on scholarships for 40% of families, and a similar proportion, 37%, they used online tools such as Our Scholar scholarships to find free money. On average, students who applied submitted 5 applications hoping to win. If scholarships are such an important source of college funding, I often wonder why some people are not using them. Among the 40% of families who did not rely on scholarship dollars to help pay for college in academic year 24-25, most 70% didn't even apply. Overall, there's a few key reasons families are skipping scholarship opportunities. Number one is lack of awareness. Just knowing where to find out real scholarships is a hurdle for 34% of those families. Oops, I jumped ahead for just a second. I wanted to go back to the slide. Reasons 2 and 3 have to do with thinking they wouldn't win, or it just takes too much time to apply. These are key barriers that stand in the way for more families taking advantage of scholarships. In addition to these reasons, there are also misconceptions that exist. For instance, 46% of families believe that scholarships are just for students with exceptional skills or abilities, like valedictorians and athletes. This is entirely untrue. There are scholarships for left-handed people, for tall people, for people who are, in animation or they're into sci-fi. Further, and this is a new data point that we collected in the 2025 report. 36% of college families think that students can only apply for scholarships before their freshman year. Of course, all know that students should apply for scholarships early and often, and is an activity to be undertaken throughout the college journey because 50% of the scholarships that are out there are available to students that are already enrolled in college. And finally, 32% of families thought it's not worth applying for scholarships when the parent makes too much money. While some scholarships are need-based, many others don't consider the financial situation of a family at all. In all, I believe the point is that we all need to do more to create awareness of scholarship opportunities and the tools that students can use to find scholarships that they are likely to qualify for. And I know that's something at Sallie Mae that we're doing each and every day is trying to, beef up our tools and in awareness of scholarships. The FAFSA and the financial aid process. The FAFSA is, as we know, is the free application for federal student aid, and it's the gateway to billions of dollars of federal aid for higher education. As all of you know, last year the FAFSA underwent a makeover that didn't go as smoothly as the Department of Education or any of us had wished. With that, we saw a decrease in FAFSA submissions among college families. Last year, 71% of families submitted the FAFSA, down from 74% of the year prior, but down significantly 12 percentage points from a high of 83% in 2017. If 71% of families submitted the FAFSA, that of course means that 29% did not. The main reason families skip the FAFSA has been consistent for many years, and that it's thinking they make too much money to qualify for any aid. That said, we do see families missing out on the potential aid due to logistical issues such as not having the required information or missing the deadline. We'll keep an eye on these logistical reasons for skipping the FAFSA, as they redesign is certainly supposed to make it much better. So in the new FAFSA, is it actually better than what it was before? The answer is yes. Nearly 2/3 of families who experienced did both say that the new FAFSA was easier to complete. 16% said they saw no difference, and 20% preferred the old FAFSA. It is also notable that even though the FAFSA was easier for those who had experience with prior versions, nearly 6 in 10 families overall still needed help when filling out the application. So the work around the FAFSA application and the financial aid process in awareness building it's never done. It's an ongoing activity. Just 5 in 1 college families are aware that the FAFSA opens in October. Financial aid offers arrived late in about 1 in 5 families this season, which is a huge improvement over 47% who experienced this last year. It's important to note that the content and clarity of financial aid offers, it really varied widely, which impacted some families' ability to truly understand what they are offered in making decisions confidently. For example, more than half of families, 55%, remembered that their financial aid offer included a scholarship amount, but fewer could recall any other pieces. Notably, just 27% mentioned that the family's out-of-pocket cost was included in the letter. There are additional points of confusion that exist as well. Namely, 1 in 5 families who received a financial aid offer for the last academic year didn't know that loans could be included, and a similar proportion believes that those loans must be taken out. And that's something that each and every year students or I'm sorry, schools are trying to clear up is the message about loans. It's clear to me that there is a need for standardization and clarification of financial aid content. Most families, 66% agree and just 5% oppose. Now I want to shift the gears for just a minute and I want to talk a little bit more about borrowing. You know what? Now let's talk about the borrowing that students will face today. While the conversation about the student debt is all around us, just about half of families borrow to help pay for academic year 24-25. The proportion of families who borrowed varied by school type. 35% of 2 year school families borrowed, 49% of 4 year public schools borrowed, and even more, 54% of 4 year private school families borrowed, which, that really is hand in hand with the price of those schools. When we compare whose families who used borrowed and those who did not pay for college, the thing that stands out and really is the most is that families borrow to offset lower contributions from parent income and savings and grants and scholarships. Borrowed funds paid for 40 cents out of every dollar of college costs for families who relied on student or parent loans. Federal student loans is the most frequently utilized loan type. 27% of students borrowed these loans last year. 12% used private loans, and about 11% used federal Parent Plus loans. About 1 in 10 families use parent or student credit cards. When we look at dollar amounts, nearly half of all the borrowed dollars from the federal program. So it's a very important part of families paying for college strategies. Families support federal loans, but with what guardrails? We collected data on how America pays for college 2025 in April and May before the legislation was actually signed in July. That said, we did ask families how they felt about the role of federal education loans. What we learned is that families valued access to federal loans, but were increasingly aware of the role in the rising costs and want clear boundaries on borrowing. 76% support the availability of federal loans for parents to help them pay for their child's education. 67 support limits on how much federal loan students can take out. 59% believe the availability of federal loans has driven up college costs. Hey, planning for college. Planning for college remains at an all-time high, which is great because statistics have shown the more you plan for college, the better off you're going to be in so many ways. There are lots and lots of moving pieces when it comes to paying for college. Our research suggests that families who plan have an advantage. The great news is that planning continues to be at an all-time high. 59% of college families said that they created a plan for how to pay for school for all the years of school before the student enrolled, which is key. And it's great that we're seeing such a high percentage, over half. Planning pays off in a number of ways, like I mentioned, but most notable is that it enables families to make financing decisions more confidently. 93% of families who planned felt confident about paying for college decisions, while fewer, 66% of non planners felt the same. And it's been proven in other studies that we have done is that planners will borrow significantly less. There are many steps that planning families take to create a plan. That said, not enough family conversations are taking place to help bring the parent and the student on the same page, even among families who plan. And it's amazing to me each and every year how many families do not even have that discussion between the student and the parent before going to school. For instance, only 46% of families discuss what all years of college will cost. Just 38% talked about the starting salary for jobs in the student's field of interest, and just 32% talked about the need for education beyond the undergraduate degree to help the student achieve their career goals. And I always think it's interesting, that so many students don't look to how much that student is going to make after they graduate in comparison to how much they are borrowing. And that is a discussion that really needs to happen. Additionally, fewer than 4 in 10 families who borrowed talk about their expectations for loan repayment. Who is making the payments? Is it going to be if the parent's name is on a plus loan? But a lot of families make an agreement that the student is going to pay on that. And our students really realizing what they are signing is for a loan that's going to be in their name. Having clarity on these key issues is one of the positive steps that families can take to help themselves. Both the student and the parent can help them for success during and after college. Some advice on paying for college. The majority of families continue to view higher education as worthwhile. So, that's great because, college education is definitely worthwhile. It's definitely a long-term investment, which they are believing in, and they're willing to stretch financially to make it happen for their child. So some quick facts on here that I think are really important is do the math and check the facts. Make sure it's something that you can be that's affordable. Make sure you complete the FAFSA. Even if families think they make too much money, I strongly, strongly encourage them to complete the FAFSA. You cannot take out any federal student loans, the on-sub or the subsidized, if you don't have the FAFSA on file. So even if you make too much money and you don't qualify for any other grants because of the results of the FAFSA, if you want to do student loans, you'll have to complete the FAFSA. Know your financial aid. Make sure that you ask the financial aid office that sends you the award. Make sure you ask them all kinds of questions. Find out what the direct costs are for the school. Direct costs are things that you're going to be billed for. Find out what other costs you might have coming up, like fees for an art class, fees for a lab, a science class. Make sure that you understand all of your aid. Make sure that the student understands how the loans work. And speaking of loans, when we talked a few minutes ago about the federal legislation passing in July, plus loans will now be capped. Students, it will be capped. They can only borrow, $20,000 a year. They won't be able to borrow more than the 65,000. And so a lot of families are going to find that they're going to run out of plus money. So what is their plan to pay for college? And then obviously the Grad Plus, which is for graduate students, is being eliminated completely after July 1. Applying for scholarships early and often is another, tidbit of advice I'd like to provide. Scholarships remain a very, very important key source for paying for college. It's never too late to apply for scholarships. I encourage you to do an online search engine. I encourage families to use the resources they have with all of you, and definitely the resources at the college or university they're applying at. And then apply when they're in college as well. And use your resources. There are so many resources out there for students today. A lot of lenders, like Sallie Mae, we have lots and lots of resources. So do other lenders. You don't have to use Sallie Mae's, but we want you to find resources that definitely work for you. Additional materials are available about this study. You can see on the left, how America pays and completes college. If you scan the QR code, you can find the fact sheets and the full report with data tables. And also at the bottom of the screen, you can see at salliemae.com/how America pays, and you can download the full study there. And I will go, and we're going to finish up early today. I never know how long the presentation is going to take with especially with questions. But I'll leave the slide here for a moment or two so you can scan the QR code. And I would definitely like to open it up for any questions that any of you might have. And if you go to Sallie Mae's website, you can see all of the different studies that we have. And I think that you'll find them very valuable. We have a lot of people at a lot of different, like, state levels at colleges and universities, at high schools that use our studies each and every year. There's also materials available, like one-page summaries, or you can download the whole study. Lots of materials available. Any questions that have come through?
I haven't seen any questions yet, but definitely welcome them. So we have a question from Scott. It seems this survey focused on 2 year and above education. Do you have any stats for certificate programs?
No, we don't really have any for certificate programs. But that is something that I will take note of. I will give that to the team of people that we have at Sallie Mae that works on certificate programs. Because certificate programs do that's a great suggestion, great question. Because certificate programs remain very, very important. Because we all know that not everybody is made out to go to a 4-year school or 2-year school, like community college. Maybe a certificate program is what a student, is cut out to do and what they need to do. So definitely take that back with me.
Thank you. And we have a question from Heather. Do you have any resources that are meant for families doing a scholarships search?
Yes, we do have lots of resources on that. When you will get an email from MCAN, and I know that they've always copied me on the email when you get it following up this webinar today. You'll have my email address at that time. You can email me what you would like, and I will be happy to send you whatever you need. But we do have lots of resources that are available on scholarships for parents and students.
And if have any trouble finding Jenny, and she's fantastic to contact and pretty easy to find, any MCAN email address, including mine, and my name's Zach Evans, and I'll drop my email in there. Feel free to message us, and we have lots of ways of getting in touch.
I encourage each and every one of you to really utilize, scholarship materials. And like I said, you don't have to use Sallie Mae's, but from any other entity out there that has resources, I encourage you to use them. I'm happy to supply ours, but they're just scholarships are such a key part of paying for college and allowing students to be able to complete college.
Give a few seconds if there are any other questions, but otherwise, I'll take it back over as I have a few just wrap up things that I want to share. But I want to give another round of thank yous to Jenny. As a former academic advisor and scholarship manager, I learned quite a bit today. So hopefully a lot of nuggets that you're able to take back to your schools, students, and families. And if any other questions do pop up, you think of it a half hour later, a week later, definitely give us a reach out. Over at MCAN, we have a lot of other resources as well as past webinars that we could maybe link if you had a question that was not focused on in this session. But otherwise, I'm just going to share a few wrap up things and then you'll be good to go. Do, 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 do. See. Awesome. So, just want to give another reminder on sketch credits as we recognize how important this is. for those that need them. But if you did not request a sketch credit when you registered, but you are attending the session, please email that sketch at micollegeaccess.org address with your name, the name of this webinar, which is How America Pays for and Completes College, and your PIC number. This is particularly important if you happen to have multiple people on the same screen, as you might just have a single registration point, but we don't need you to take the quiz if you are live during this session. And speaking of quiz, there will still be up to one sketch available for viewing this recording. And if you are watching this webinar as a recording, you will have to complete the quiz that is linked on our website, probably where you found this recording link as well. There is a password for the quiz, and that is funding, as you'll be able to see on that slide. And it is a 10-question quiz, so not too much time in order to receive that sketch credit. And again, if you are live with us today, you do not need to take that quiz. Um, in addition to everything that we learned today, we're going to keep the knowledge train going. And I want to let you know about a few other professional developments that MCAN has in the next month. We will have another session with Sallie Mae focused on how America pays for college. Then in March, on March 4th, we'll be working with our friends at Zello. So beyond the basics, Zello success stories. And then on March 11th, again, focus on the US in general with how America succeeds after college. And we also want to draw particular focus and attention. If you have not heard about this, NCAN each year hosts what we call our Advocacy Day, now called College Attainment Advocacy Day. And this is a free advocacy event that happens in Lansing, Michigan. What we do is match up educators with legislative representatives. We will provide you with data, information, training in order to advocate about education. So, speaking on behalf of your students, talking about what you were experiencing in the classroom or at your institution, and getting that word out, as we know firsthand experience and stories are some of the most powerful ways to move that needle. Again, this is a free event, but always just want to give a little thoughtfulness and how you show up, as some of you might be restricted from formally advocating or lobbying within your job. So making sure if that is the case, you show up as a private citizen, take a day off and hang out with us in Lansing um, there. So yeah, we would love to see you there. Now, another thing to just draw your attention to, if you are not already on it, we definitely recommend joining the MCAN e-News. In addition to events and opportunities like Advocacy Day or today's professional development, we'll also send out legislative updates, news of what's happening in higher education in Michigan, as well as other ways that you could potentially get involved. We also have a fair amount of grants and funding opportunities. So just multiple ways that you can engage in the network. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. We know your time is valuable, and hopefully you're taking away some amazing things. But we look forward to seeing you at our next MCAN event. And if you do have any questions, we'll stick around for a little bit. But thank you again and take care. Bye.